have an ASL interpreter here, so if that's something you need and you need to move to the front, we can accommodate that for you. So anyway, I'm so happy to see all these people here, right in Caribou. My name is Jordan Rosnall, for those who don't know me. And I have the honor today of introducing our guests, the reason we're here. When I was asked to do this, Genevieve said, the location is 67 Sweden. Do you know where that is? Yeah, I do. My daycare is right across the street. My beautiful childcare center that sits empty and destroyed because leaders like Sue Collins didn't think that was an important issue to work on. So it's bittersweet that I'm here. I'm more fired up than ever about this. I started speaking out and making noise because it was clear, and it's still clear, we need a childcare system that works. But when I campaigned myself in 22 and helped on the state house race in 24, I became increasingly aware of all the other broken systems that were hurting Mainers. Every conversation I had knocking doors across the county all echoed very similar sentiments and concerns regardless of party. The people making decisions on our behalf have no clue what we are going through. They haven't been through the stress that we face day in and day out. We need leaders who have worked with their hands like we have. We need leaders who have changed diapers for minimum wage like we have. We need people who have had to decide between paying their mortgage or filling their oil tanks like we have. My friends, I think we found the leader who understands what we're talking about. It's an understatement to say that things aren't going well in our country right now. We're mad, we're frustrated, tensions are high, most of us are scared. We're at each other's throats, we don't know who to be mad at, we're even turning on each other. We need a reset. We need something new, something real, and we're sick of the bullshit. Sorry for the kids that are not mine that are here. Marlon. Miss Joe said a bad word, sorry. And this guy is no bullshit. If we had a picture of what it means to F around and find out, we'd be looking at a picture of Graham Platner. So please, give a warm welcome to our next senator from Maine, Graham Platner.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. Honestly, seeing this turnout up here makes me very happy for a myriad of reasons. It's Caribou. It's the home of our current senator. So I just wanted to say thanks a lot for turning out. This gives me a lot of hope. I also just wanted to say that I don't think we could have picked a better day to come up and do this run in the county. I love coming up here, but the weather today is perfect. And seeing, frankly, the trucks full of potatoes, it makes me feel very, very happy because it feels like it's a good time to be here to really connect with this place. And then the leaves are turning, it's kind of perfect. I really could not have figured out that we could have done this on a better time than today. So my name's Graham Platner, and I'm going to run for Senate, or I am running for Senate against Susan Collins. Woo! So I was born and raised out on the coast. I'm from the town of Sullivan. I was born in Blue Hill. I grew up in Ellsworth and then Sullivan. I went to high school up in Bangor. After high school, I joined the Marine Corps. I joined the infantry, and I did 4 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. First in the Marine Corps, and then in the Army. Yay! The Marine Corps got me first, so that's where all the tattoos are from. I left the Marine Corps, went to college briefly in Washington, D.C. at GW, wound up re-enlisting into the Army, went to Afghanistan for a year, came back in 2011 and went back to school full time. I stayed in school for a while. Frankly, I struggled a bit after my 4th deployment. I think a lot of young men and women who go off and fight the wars that I fought. It's hard to come home. And I went back to school for a little while. In 2016, I left DC and I came back to Maine full time. I didn't finish at GW. I'm about 16 credits shy. The oysters on my farm don't care, so I'm not going to come back. I came back to Maine despite a brief stint back in Afghanistan in 2018, working for the State Department. I've been back ever since. And I moved back to my hometown, and I started an oyster farm. And it's a small commercial dive business, And until recently, I was pretty convinced that being the harbor master of Sullivan was the extent of my political career. But I've spent a lot of time recently getting extremely disillusioned and in many ways extremely angry. And it's happening because I am watching the community that I love, the place that I was born and raised, effectively get stripped apart, get broken down, get polarized and divided, all in the service of letting the already wealthy and powerful accrue more wealth and power. And I am seeing it happen on a daily basis. I am seeing people I know who work immensely hard not be able to afford their homes. I am seeing families that I know who have been in my part of Maine for generations not be able to provide health care to their children because of the collapsing rural health care system. I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it happening, not because it has to, but because we are living in a system that is built to extract wealth and time and energy out of working people and put it into bank accounts on Wall Street, into private equity funds in California. And I'm seeing it done by politicians who have spent decades building the system that we live in today. And it has to stop. It has to end. Because what we are living in right now is entirely unsustainable. We are living in a healthcare system that is literally falling apart as we speak. And I think those of you in this part of Maine, much like my part of Eastern Maine, we are seeing this happening right now. We are seeing services disappear. We are seeing the fact that if you have Anthem and you're still dealing with a Northern Light facility, they gave us a 30-day extension, but they haven't fixed the problem. We're looking at 30% of people who have health insurance in this part of Maine losing coverage, not because you made a mistake, not because you did something wrong, not because you haven't worked hard enough, but because two companies are fighting over who gets to make more money out of you. That's why that coverage is going to get lost. Not because we don't have the resources, not because we don't have the hospitals, we don't have the nurses, we don't have the money. That's not why it's going away. It's going away because people in boardrooms are fighting about who gets to make the most money off of your backs. That's why it has happened. And it's because we have a system that has allowed that to happen. What really frustrates me, my mom's family's been in Maine since the early 1800s. And when you look back through history, look back at the jobs they held, building the railroads, working in the logging industry, the fishing industry, these are people that work incredibly hard. And in Maine, we have always worked incredibly hard. We're very proud of it. Working multiple jobs, seasonal jobs, scraping it together, figuring out how to live in Maine, that is something that we have done for a long time. My mom always has a saying, or she has a saying, that at some point in your life, whether you're from here or you came from away, you choose to live in Maine. And after that, you figure it out. I found that to be true. But the figuring it out part is no longer working. When I was growing up, I know people that put their kids through college as a clamor. I knew guys that stirred in the summertime, plowed driveways in the wintertime, did wreath making. This was enough for them to own their own home. It was enough for them to raise a family. It was enough for them to give their family health care. Those days are over. I know people now that work 2, 3 jobs and still have to pick up a shift at Home Depot just to get health benefits. That is not how it used to be. And it wasn't very long ago that it wasn't like that. The reason we are in the straits we are, it's not because Mainers stopped working hard. It's not because people in the state got lazy. It's not because we've contributed less to our communities. It's because we have been robbed. We've been robbed for almost 40 years by a politics and an economic system that it supports that has sucked money out of working people in this country and put it into the pockets of billionaires and corporations. That is why we are where we are. In 1990, there were fewer than 100 billionaires in the United States. Today, there are over 800. When you look around, do you see a community that is 8 times wealthier than 1990? Do we make 8 times as much money? Do we have 8 times the hospitals, 8 times the schools? Of course not. That money went somewhere, and we all know where it went. It all went into financialized services, into Wall Street, into big tech, into the fact that companies like Uber weren't profitable for 15 years. It went into funding the greed and the speculation of those that already had immense amounts of wealth. That's where the money went. And it is time for us to take it back. It is time for us to build the power that we need to build a politics again that represents the working people of Maine. We are not going to get that with the establishment politicians who have built the system we live in today. We need something entirely different. We need to send up politicians, to send people up from our world, from the working world. And the only way we're going to do it is by building out the capacity and the structure to do it ourselves. Nobody is coming down to save us. No one in Washington, D.C. has any interest in coming down here and helping change politics in the state of Maine. And the dirty secret, the truth of all of this is that it cannot be left at the feet of one political party. As long as the Democratic Party in Washington is saying the same corporate apparatus that the Republican Party is, we're going to find ourselves back here again and again and again. And they are not going to fix it for us. The Democratic Party in this country has lost the working class. But it has lost the working class because it made the decision to stop supporting the working class. We have... I want to make it clear, I'm not talking about us as Democrats. I'm fully convinced that the Democratic Party was run by most Democrats. We would have the party that we want it to be. But it isn't anymore. It's run by a small group of people up in Washington who make an immense amount of money from the political apparatus that we have built that raises funds from the rich and puts it into our political system. They're not going to be the ones to save us. We need to do it ourselves. The way for us to do this is building power on the local level. And the reason I'm running as a Democrat is because I still have faith that we can turn this party back into the party that I thought it was when I became one. We can turn it back into the party. The Democratic Party can again be the party of unions. It can again be the party of working people. It can again be the party that looks at big structural change to help working people in this country. We're the party of Social Security. We're the party of Medicare. We're the party of Medicaid. We need to be the party again that fights to not just protect those systems, but to expand them. Yeah! But the only way that we get to be that party again is by doing it ourselves from the ground up. But the reason that I have hope, the reason that I still have not given in to apathy and disillusionment, is because American history tells me that we have legacies that we can draw on to take us into a better future. We have the legacy of the labor movement. We have the legacy of the suffragette movement, of the civil rights movement, of the disability rights movement. And none of these are movements of asking permission. We did not get... We did not get an 8-hour workday and a 40-hour work week because somebody wrote a nice letter to their congressman. We got it because working people organized and fought for it. They built power to put pressure on the institutions to make them do what they needed. They did that by organizing. We didn't get the Civil Rights Act because LBJ wanted it to happen. We got it because decades of work were put in by organizers in the South and across this country to build power and strategies, to put pressure on the presidency and the Senate to make sure that we could finally make a leap forward in this country towards justice and equality. But it didn't happen because somebody in power wanted it to. It happened because those of us down here built power and made it happen. Those are the legacies that we need to tap back into. My background is not in electoral politics. It's in community organizing. I have seen firsthand the material wins a community can get when it organizes, it networks, it builds real power within itself to fight for the things that it needs. This race for me is not just about beating Susan Collins. It is not just about flipping the Senate back to a Democratic Senate. It is about building in the state of Maine an organized working class power that we have not seen in generations. And I think right now we have fertile ground for this. Because everyone in Maine, Republican or Democrat, Trump supporter or progressive, when you walk around this state, you ask any working person in the state, and you think that you live in a system, a political system, an economic system that has your best interest at heart. Nobody says yes to that. Everyone says no. Because everybody knows in their bones they are being robbed and screwed. It is why we are angry. We need to be again the party to tap into that anger. We need to be the party that has the message to tell people who is to blame. Because right now, we spend a lot of time pointing fingers left and right. But we should be pointing fingers in only one direction, and that is up. When we do that, when we build that kind of messaging, when we build that community again, that is where we begin to build the power to fight for the things that we need. The things that we need, like Medicare for all. Things that we need, like child care. And protect. We need to bring back the Department of Education. We need to remove the cap on Social Security so we can raise and expand benefits. These are the things that we need to do. We need to do it because it is what is right by the American working class. It was what is doing right by the American working family. And we used to be the party of this. We lost it. And until we get it back, I fear we find ourselves back in these straits again and again and again. But we can still do it. We still have the ability, because around Maine right now, I think many of us in this room know that Republican policies coming out of the Trump administration are not going to improve working people's lives. Many of us in this room know that the hundreds of billions of dollars that were cut out of Medicaid and Medicare back in the spring by the Big Beautiful Bill, those cuts are going to close hospitals in rural Maine. Those cuts are going to restrict access to health care in rural Maine. We know that Republicans giving Wall Street a bunch of tax breaks are not going to drive down the prices of goods, and they are not going to drive down the prices of houses. We know that. And that is why we need to be there with open arms to welcome back many of our neighbors who were lied to, who were taken in. When your neighbor's house gets broken into, you don't laugh at them afterwards. You don't point fingers and say you deserved it. You go over there and you hug them and you help them. Many of our neighbors have been robbed. Many of our neighbors have been robbed. They've been robbed of their critical thinking. They've been robbed of access to real information. And through that, they've been robbed of their empathy and their compassion.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't think that many of them did it willingly. I think people are misinformed. I think people are propagandized. But I don't think people are stupid. I think at its core, people know that they're being screwed. And Donald Trump came along with a message that that was true. They were being robbed. They were being screwed. He pointed the fingers in all the wrong directions. But we weren't pointing fingers anywhere. We as Democrats at the national level, we did not have answers to that anger. We did not have answers to the fact that people knew deep down that they were living in a system that was taking advantage of them. As these systems fall apart, as healthcare gets worse, as housing gets worse, as prices go up, we need to be there with open arms and compassionate empathy to welcome a lot of these people back. And we need to be there with a message of who is to blame. I was born and raised in Eastern Maine, and I did 4 tours in the infantry. I am not afraid to name the enemy. The enemy is the oligarchy. Woo! What's amazing to me is that I'm continually told to not use that word because somehow people aren't supposed to know what it means. And yet every single time I use that word, everybody cheers. So I assume we're a bit more literate than the political class actually thinks we are. I also sometimes get asked, like, why use that word? And I say, well, I looked at the definition. And it's what's happening. So. The people to blame for the straits we are in are on Wall Street. They're in Silicon Valley. They're in private equity. They're in hedge funds. Those are where we need to point fingers. And to be entirely honest, that's also where we need to go looking for the money to pay for the programs that we need. We have the ability to use the tax code to claw money back. Because to be honest, that was our money. Nobody works hard enough to justify $1 billion, not in a world where I know people that have 3 jobs and can't even afford their rent. I refuse to believe that in a state like Maine where people work as hard as we do here, that it is merely hard work that gets you that kind of success. We all know it isn't. We all know it's the structures, it's the tax code. That is what allows that money to get accrued, and that is also why we can get it back. Because the world that we live in today, is not organic. It is not natural. The political and economic world we have did not happen because it had to. It happened because politicians in Washington and the billionaires that write the policies that they pushed, they made this happen. They changed the laws, and they made it legal to accrue as much wealth and power as they have now. And we need to go make it illegal again to do that. One of those politicians is Susan Collins. Boo! At this point, I don't think the charade holds any water anymore. I think all of us know, and frankly, a lot of Republicans in the state know, that she is just another establishment politician who does what is good for her, because what is good for her is good for her donors. Many of us know that. She has been at the forefront of legislation that has screwed working people in the state.
Yeah.
And she has done it for ages, trying to masquerade as a moderate. But I don't buy that anymore. And Maine deserves better than Susan Collins.
Yeah.
But we also deserve an alternative that is not going to look like the status quo that she serves. We deserve an alternative. We deserve a campaign and a politics that comes from working people in Maine and represents working people in Maine. Woo! We need to build a political movement in this state that we have not seen in generations. We need to build organized communities and organized workplaces in a way that we have not seen since the 1930s. And the reason we have to do this is because the politics that we're going to need to get ourselves out of the mess that we're in right now looks a hell of a lot more like the New Deal than anything else. If I am any kind of Democrat, I'm a New Deal Democrat. My personal, I'm still kind of new to this. I'm trying to figure out where applause lines are. It's not always easy. That's what one to say. One of my personal heroes is Francis Perkins. Francis Perkins is also a hero of the state of Maine. First woman cabinet member. She went up into the FDR administration, not looking to make little changes around the margins. She wasn't trying to figure out how to use a tax credit here or a block grant there to change things. She went up and she invented something entirely new, and that thing was Social Security. She invented it out of whole cloth because she knew that a country that is supposed to take care of its people cannot let its elderly slip into poverty, cannot let the resources and the wealth that we have go underutilized as our elderly slip into undignified lives. She knew that and she built something big. And we need to go back to those days. We need to go back to the days of Democrats talking about big structural change. That is the only way that we get ourselves out of the crisis that we find ourselves in now. And I'm afraid that establishment politicians are not going to be the people to do it. I do not hear that kind of rhetoric out of most Democratic politicians these days, even the ones that I like. I do not hear that commitment to bigger structural change. That is the commitment that we need. And we need to send up people who believe in that. It's the only way we're going to get the future that we deserve. We also need to send people up who are going to come and listen to the communities that they represent. The reason I'm holding these town halls is because I am a hardworking man. Up until about 8 weeks ago, which is still a very, very weird thing to figure out. Up until about 8 weeks ago, the idea that I was ever going to talk to a United States Senator was beyond reality to me. I did not have the time to go to a meeting in Portland or Augusta. I did not have the money to buy a fancy plate at a fundraiser. If somebody in the U.S. Senate was going to hear my voice, they were going to have to come to Ellsworth, Maine, and listen to me ask them questions. And so the first thing that we did was we went to Ellsworth, Maine, and we held a town hall. Because Susan Collins has not held a town hall since Bill Clinton was president. I am a firm believer that if you're going to represent the working people of Maine, you got to go out into communities of working people in Maine and make yourself accessible. Yep. That is why I'm here. That's why I've come up this way. And I make the promise to you that I'm going to keep doing this throughout the campaign and throughout my time in office. I always want to be It is paramount to me that we build a politics again in Maine that represents Mainers. And I feel as though we have not had that in a very long time, not down in Washington. We've had some people who are worse than others, but truthfully at its core, it has been 30, 40 years since we've had a full Maine delegation that was in Washington representing the people of Maine and the working families of Maine. What we are up against now is an entire political apparatus that does not want that to happen. In many ways, on both sides of the aisle, we are up against an immense amount of power. But I firmly believe that by coming into rooms like this, by talking to each other, by building community, we're going to be able to build the power, tap into those legacies in American history that show us the way forward, and we're going to be able to rebuild politics in this state and eventually in this country in a way that represents the actual working people of the United States. Thank you very much. So for my favorite part, I'm going to take questions. I think what we'll just do, the room's small enough. If you have a question, raise your hand, I'll punch you out. Yes, ma'am.
Try to get this country to follow the social determinants of health. We are the only G7 country that does. Excuse my language, y'all. Fucking do it.
Woo! So, I'm just going to tell you a brief little story. I have the strange luck of being a disabled combat veteran. I was lucky enough to do 4 tours to Iraq and Afghanistan and get blown up enough that the VA says that I deserve health care. And a little bit of money every month that helps me pay my mortgage. If it wasn't for that, I would not have been able to move back to Southern Maine. If it wasn't for that, I would not have been able to start a business. Because I get free health care, and because I get a roof over my head, that gave me an immense amount of freedom. That gave me an immense amount of material freedom to build a life that I wanted to build. I don't think that you should have to go fight in stupid foreign wars. So, to get that kind of healthcare is a human right.
Yes.
And we live in a society that spends more money on healthcare, 3 times more almost, than the next country coming up behind us, and we get some of the worst health outcomes in the developed world.
Yep.
We have the resources, we have the money, we have the nurses, we have the doctors, we have everything we need to provide good health care like I get to every single American. We just have what might be the most inefficient system of providing health care that you could possibly think of. And the reason we have it is because it was built to make a couple rich people even richer. But not only do I think that universal health care is a moral imperative, which I believe, not only do I think that it is important for us as a society to do that for each other, in my personal experience, it also unleashes creativity. It unleashes small business. I often think about what Eastern Maine would look like if all of my friends who work incredibly hard didn't have to worry about healthcare. What businesses would we have? What art would be created? What risks would be taken? What extra time would people have in their lives to connect and build community if they didn't have to scrape and struggle in jobs that they hate just so they could have health insurance? I truly think that it's not just about the moral imperative. As a society, it is how we build ourselves into a better world. And it is very much a core of what I want to go to DC and fight for.
Hi. So my question is because I think we have an elite impunity problem in the U.S. I think Democrats have a bad habit of always looking forward in order to build unity, and they never look back. And I think that this allows the rich and powerful to think that they can just get away with it. Some examples include the Bush administration lying about WMDs, leading to over 100,000 deaths of Iraqi civilians. the Obama administration and its drone strike program killing U.S. citizens as well as innocent Pakistani civilians. Over in the private sector, we have the Sackler family responsible for the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
They basically paid enough money that they never had to admit any wrongdoing whatsoever, let alone face consequences. And the Biden administration never prosecuted Trump for January 6th. And now he's
Yeah.
it again. So my question is, what are you going to do about the elite impunity problem?
As somebody that had to go fight in Iraq, I will never forgive the people that lied and sent me into that war.
Yeah.
I watched my friends die. Not in some kind of fantastical way, but up close and personal. I watched us use immense amounts of violence against innocent people who did nothing wrong, whose country we invaded. I still hold on to an immense amount of rage over that. In many ways, it is from that experience that I have kind of informed my current thinking on this, which is that there is no way that we get to be recognized in the international world as a real leader if we do not recognize international law.
Right.
Which we are not doing. I am of the opinion that if people need to go up for a war crimes tribunal in front of the ICC, the United States government needs to arrest those people and send them over. But the sad truth of this is that as a single U.S. senator, I will not be the one to be able to arrest the Sackler family, as much as I want to. I do, however, think that is where the power building comes in. We very much need to build power in the state of Maine to make sure that it's not just me we're sending up. That down the road, we are sending up more people that believe in equality and justice. That we are sending up people who are not going to let the ultra-rich, the ultra-wealthy, and the ultra-powerful just get away with destroying communities and destroying lives, with starting illegal wars. I will, in my power as a U.S. Senator, do everything I can to bring about justice, to bring about accountability for those who behind me have broken the law. I promise you that. I do think, however, that we need to make some deeper structural changes, because until we do, we're still going to be up against the system that was built by those people to protect those people. But I also think that we need to fight for those changes. That's the only way we're going to get them. Yes, ma'am.
On that very note, Citizens United,
Ah.
mention worthy for social media, their discussion plan for it.
Well, Citizens United is a hard one. I would love to fix it with legislation, but the Supreme Court might just say it's illegal. Citizens United might be one of the worst things that's ever happened in American politics. Period. End of story. If I had my way, elections would be publicly funded. They would last about 2 months. And if anybody looked at making a TV ad the wrong way, we put them in jail forever.
Yeah.
Sadly, my vote, the U.S. Senate is probably not going to get that. What I will say is this. Democrats in the Senate need to be leveraging their actual power to make sure that we bring about structural changes where we can actually end this up. And one of these I'm going to say is going to be ethics oversight. Democrats, if we retake the Senate, I'm really hoping that we do. Democrats are going to have the power to bring in, especially if we get rid of the 2/3 filibuster, which we need to get rid of, we are going to be able to actually start enforcing legitimate ethics oversight on the Supreme Court. And I would make the argument that there are at least two justices that a very, very slight ethics investigation into would very likely result in a good reason for impeachment and removal. So this isn't a direct answer, and I'm sorry for that. But the truth is, much of the stuff that we all want to change isn't going to happen until we start exercising power. It's not going to happen until we start treating positions of power that we have like they're as powerful as they actually are. For a long time, Democrats in the Senate, in many ways, have shied away from wielding the power that they have. I don't know why this is. I have theories. But they have not utilized it. And I am not going down there to be part of the system. I'm not a reform candidate. I want to make that clear. I'm not going to go down to Washington to change some little things on occasion or try to convince the Democratic Party to come along. We need to change the party from the ground up. We need to have a theory of power again, a theory of using power when we have it, and not just sitting by the wayside and saying, well, the rule book says, because the other side doesn't care about the rule. Yeah. But until we can build enough power in the Democratic Party and the independents that caucus with us to use it like that, ending Citizens United, I mean, that's going to take a constitutional convention in its current form. We're not going to get that. So we really need to look into other mechanisms, which I think primarily is treating the Supreme Court like the political activist entity it's become, not a constitutional body.
I'm a physician at Northern Light Health locally at A.R. Gould. Just hearing you talk about the Anthem and Northern Light Health dispute, I just want to point out the hospitals aren't getting rich. The hospitals are in trouble.
Yeah.
I worry about my patients getting care. I worry about my hospital staying open. And we're already very strapped for medical facilities in this area, as a lot of Maine. So I just wanted to thank you for speaking to support the hospitals, but also just to mention to you that it's not so much the hospital corporation versus the insurance corporation. The insurance corporations are the ones getting rich, not the hospitals.
Yeah.
In the system that we live in, it is not the hospitals that are doing the bad things. Hospitals are trying to provide care. Across the country, they are doing their best. But when we create scarcity for them, and it's a scarcity that's just made up. Again, we have the resources. When we cut Medicaid and Medicare, which rural hospitals rely on to stay open, because rural healthcare is not profitable. Just like rural postal systems are not profitable. But we shouldn't look at them as profitable systems. We should look at them as systems that are providing services. And we should fund them to do so.
As a senator, what will you do to end the war gossip?
Not a single taxpayer dollar should be spent on arming and defending a country that commits a genocide. I would absolutely support Senator Sanders' bill to restrict military aid, but I'll be entirely honest, looking down the road, this is a nation that right now is exterminating people.
Yeah.
It is going to be very difficult for me to ever be able to look at them again and see someone that we should be working with closely.
Yes.
I an immense amount of work is gonna have to be done,
Yeah.
in my opinion, to fix that relationship. Because what I am witnessing now is the height of horror.
Yes.
And the fact that it is being done by bombs that are built in this country and paid for with our tax dollars is utterly unconscionable, and it needs to end. Yes, sir.
Your public stance on term limits, because we have people that are 70, 80, almost 90 years old, making laws that they're not even gonna live to see enacted.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in term limits. I will absolutely fight for them in the Senate. I'm not yet sold on whether it should be 3 or 4 terms. In my opinion, if you got 18 to 24 years, if you didn't get done what you went up there to do, somebody else deserves a try. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, first of all, I think the Democratic leadership needs to go, Congressman.
Yes.
Jeffries, they need to go.
Yeah.
The thing is, the status quo is gonna remain,
Yes.
no matter who gets it in, because they begin to assimilate anybody who gets it. And undermine progressive policy.
Yes.
Second of all, I think labor unions should be leading to those rights.
So, I agree. The thing is that this country has waged a war on labor for the last 50 years. I mean, in some ways, it's waged a war on labor since the beginning. Labor popularity is at an all-time high. Something like over 70% of Americans approve of and support labor unions, while we're at an all-time low of labor density. It's not that people don't want to join unions. It's that unions have had power cut out from under them. Right to work laws, the ability of the federal government to just restrict collective bargaining agreements from federal workers, these pull away the power of labor. I would very much love to see a general strike. I think that is something that we should work with. But I will say, anybody in this room has ever been on a strike. You know that holding out a strike in one single shot is incredibly hard. It requires an immense amount of money, requires an immense amount of resources, it requires an immense amount of solidarity and trust that is built within a community. We are so far away from that. I think that, one, we need to rebuild the power of labor in this country. Like, I want to vote for the PRO Act. I want to make sure that every single American worker has the right to join a union, and that that union will be able to interact with the National Labor Relations Board that takes organizing and takes unfair labor practices seriously. Because right now it doesn't. And one of the reasons that unions get busted right now is that workers get together, they organize, they sign cards, they join a union, they form a union, and then the company holds out contract negotiations for years. Right now, at University of Maine, in Orem, the grad student workers there who are part of UAW, they've been waiting on a contract for almost 700 days. Jesus. The reason they are waiting that long is not because contract negotiations are taking that long. It's because it's being used as a union busting tactic. And it needs to be illegal.
Yeah.
But until we build back in the structural protections for workers to organize, it is going to be very hard for workers to organize. And so I agree with you, I just want to point this out. The reason that I am doing this campaign is I want to use it as a mechanism to build out that kind of organizing here in the state of Maine. I want you to come into this through electoral politics. When you come in and volunteer, when you come in and go to volunteer meetings, go to offices, I want you to learn the feeling of solidarity that you get when you work with others in your community fighting for the things that you believe. Because when you begin to build that feeling of solidarity and build that trust, That is where we begin to build power. Because there is no way we get a gentle strike if we do not have organized communities. We cannot do it. We need to build trust and we need to build confidence in ourselves to be able to hold out. Because when we don't work, we don't get paid. In good feelings, in feelings of pride and decency, they don't pay the bills. They don't put food on the table. We need to be able to build the capacity in our communities to organize and support each other if we are ever going to accomplish something like a general strike. One more, I've already chosen the one with these wonderful t-shirts.
How are you going to protect LGBT community and protect us from, I see a lot of ice raids. Yeah.
I will never vote for any kind of legislation that is going to restrict protections on the LGBTQ community, because I firmly believe that people deserve to live the lives they want to live in their bodies as they choose. This also extends to a woman's right to her own body. The right to make healthcare decisions about your own body needs to be enshrined in law.
Yeah.
We cannot go back to a world where we just rely on Supreme Court decisions to give us those rights. That is a right that needs to be statutory, so it stands forever. So, I hate this part. I need your money.